Hello, I'm gonna talk about three-dimensional non-visual directional guidance for people with visual impairments. This work has been done by SeungA Chung, Kyungyeon Lee, Sohyeon Park, and Uran Oh from Ewha Womans University in Seoul of South Korea. I'm the presenter, SeungA Chung. We usually use sight to explore space. However, people with visual impairments, called PVI in short, have difficulty navigating space. One of the most helpful things for PVI to explore spatial areas is directional guidance. Thus, a number of researchers investigated providing directional feedback via a non-visual channel to PVI. The most representative is audio and haptic feedback. For instance, GPS Tune, a portable navigation system that enables users to wayfind through audio, is proposed. It informs the remaining distance to the target destination with different levels of volume and walking direction with panning sound. On the other hand, Orton and researchers designed a wearable haptic navigation guidance system through a vest with 4 vibration motors to reduce the amount of auditory attention required for PVI. Each motor is mapped to one of the 4 cardinal directions which convey walking directions towards the target destination while navigating a route. However, the directional guidance supported by most of these studies for spatial navigation is limited to two-dimensional space, such as navigating a physical route or following a path with a finger to reach a specific coordinate on a touchscreen. Thus, little has studied on how to design three-dimensional directional guidance with non-visual feedback for PVI. Therefore, we studied the design of three-dimensional directional guidance in 3D space using audio and haptic feedback. We had previously conducted a user study with 12 blindfolded participants to explore the effects of various feedback for three-dimensional directional guidance. However, there are some limitations on the provided feedback designs and the fact that the differences between the PVI and blindfolded sighted people still exist, which could affect the findings. For such reasons, we decided to conduct a further study with idealized feedback designs to collect and examine the data of our previously intended target users, people with visual impairments. To investigate different non-visual feedback designs to inform users with specific directions in 3D, we conducted a 1-hour single sessions within subject study with 6 participants who are blind or have low vision. 2 out of 6 participants reported that they have tried virtual reality before, while the other 4 participants have not. All of them do not have hearing difficulties. They were asked to point towards the direction of the target using a controller in a 3D virtual space given non-visual feedback. For the experiment, we used an HTC Vive Pro Eye, a head-mounted display for tracking and logging the orientation of the participant's head and conveying audio feedback, and a handheld controller for conveying vibration feedback and pointing to the target. As for the software, we use Unity with Audio Spatializer SDK and Unity Audio Mixer. We had 2 factors in the user study. First, the presence of stereo sound generated from the target object. It has 2 levels as on and off. We will call it stereo from now on. Second, feedback modality varying the type and the combination of audio and haptic feedback. It has 3 levels such as beeping only, vibration only, and beeping with vibration. We will call this factor a mode. To be more specific for the stereo factor, pleasant music is played in a loop constantly in a stereo mode where the source of the sound is set to the location of the target. On the other hand, beeping and vibration are played in a mono mode where the source is set to the top of participant's head. The frequency of the mode increases as the pointing direction gets closer to the target. The frequency of the beeping sound and vibration is based on the distance between the center of the target and a point B, which is labeled as C in the figure. The frequency increases as C decreases for both beeping and vibration feedback. In addition, the pitch for beeping sound was set to reciprocal of the half of distance so that as the laser raycast gets closer to the target, it plays a higher pitch sound relative to the original sound. In all conditions, we provided additional sound cue when the laser raycast from a controller had just entered the target, as well as a continuous haptic cue while the laser raycast is pointing the target once entered. A ding-dong sound was played if participants successfully trigger a button while pointing at the target. The log was saved with timestamps for all trials for the analysis. Overall, we collected 360 data. Two-way ANOVA was used to evaluate the interaction effect between two factors in terms of task completion time and travel distance for finding each target. For post-hoc analysis, pairwise comparisons were used. Subjective responses such as participants' preference and the reasons were collected as well. The study began by collecting participants' personal information such as age and gender. After a briefing about the study, participants were asked to sit on a rotating chair at a fixed location so that they can change their facing direction in 360 degrees while seated. Then we asked them to wear a head-mounted device and handed the controller to their dominant hand. They were instructed to find a virtual target that randomly appeared in various directions in 3D by listening to the directional feedback as quickly as possible. Each participant tried all 6 conditions where the order was counterbalanced using a balanced Latin square design. For each condition, we first provided a practice session with a single target to help participants get familiar with each feedback. As soon as they completed the practice, 10 targets appeared in random order with the fixed shape and size and distance for each condition, where the coordinates of the 10 targets were predefined to cover various directions as much as possible by sampling 10 coordinates from the surface of an upper semisphere. After completing all conditions, we collected subjective feedback regarding their experience with each condition. We focused on the results in terms of objective feedback as task performance like task completion time and travel distance, and subjective feedback like preferences. First, we found that stereo sound feedback doesn't have a significant effect on task completion time and travel distance. However, beeping sound feedback regardless of vibration feedback outperforms the mode where only vibration feedback is provided. On the other hand, there was no significant difference between beeping only and beeping with vibration feedback. We further analyzed participants' laser traces to check if there are properties when trying to point the direction towards a target in 3D space. As shown in the figure, we found that participants tend to scan the environment horizontally first, then adjust the pointing direction with stereo feedback. We assume that this behavior is due to the characteristics of the stereo sound where left and right is easier to distinguish than top to bottom. However, similar behavior could be observed even when stereo feedback was not present. We also found that the participants' preference towards stereo feedback was equally divided. However, 5 out of 6 participants mentioned that having stereo feedback was helpful to estimate the direction of where the target is based on their head orientations, especially with the horizontal directions, and it reflects the trace analysis results. However, one participant commented that stereo sound was distracting to find the correct pointing direction. In addition, although it was not tested, all participants noted that stereo sound only without any other proximity-based feedback such as beeping or vibration feedback will not be sufficient for completing the task. Besides, all participants reported that they preferred beeping feedback with and without vibration feedback. Participants who prefer beeping-only feedback responded that the information delivered by the vibration feedback and beeping feedback was redundant, which made them disturbing. However, participants who prefer beeping with vibration feedback mentioned that receiving information simultaneously on 2 modalities is preferable because it can depend on more than one sense. On the other hand, all of them chose the vibration-only condition as their least preferred condition, especially when stereo feedback is not provided. From the study, we found that the difference between 2 participants groups blindfolded people from the prior study and PVI from this study. We expected the findings of blindfolded sighted people and PVI to be similar, and we actually found the common point that vibration-only feedback showed the lowest performance. However, the presence of stereo has helped the blindfolded group in terms of task performance and preference, but has not shown a positive effect on the PVI group. In addition, there was a difference in preference between beeping-only condition and beeping with vibration condition in the blindfolded group, but PVI did not have a significant difference in preference. Although there were slight differences in feedback design between the previous study and this study, so that direct comparison could not be made, the difference may have been caused by the fact that PVI is more familiar with receiving audio feedback than blindfolded group. We found a common searching behavior when we analyzed the trace of the prior study and this study. When we asked the participants to find the target, most of them first scanned the surroundings horizontally. From the findings, we suggest two-step directional guidance, such as giving horizontal direction before vertical direction to be more intuitive than the current feedback design, which conveys both directions at once. In fact, we are now investigating the two-step guidance as future work. Before I finish the presentation, I will briefly cover our study. We conducted a user study with 6 participants with visual impairments to better understand the effects of different non-visual feedback designs. We asked them to point 10 targets as soon as possible in virtual reality. We analyzed the findings from this study and compared them to the results of the prior study. Our findings showed that all participants showed better performance in terms of task completion time and travel distance with beeping sound than vibration feedback. However, although most participants agreed to the helpfulness of the stereo sound, there was no significant effect on the performance. In addition, we confirmed the tendency to find the direction of the target with horizontal scanning. Although the findings were noticeable, our study has some limitations. First, our participants were only 6, so the sample size was too small to generalize the findings. Also, we did not find any significant differences in the results between the participants who are blind and those who have low vision. We assumed that the visual feedback from the HMD device could have affected the results. Lastly, our study was conducted through virtual reality. If we ran the experiments in a natural setting with minimum use of hardware devices, the findings could be different since there are no factors of weight. Based on the findings learned from this study, we plan to extend this work by conducting this study with more participants, focusing on supporting two-step 3D directional guidance with proximity-based audio feedback with various parameters such as volume and pitch. Here are my references, and thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me.